Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy. And who's that? We have a special guest today. This is a legend. A legend is among us, folks. And a great old friend from way back. We were children together.
We were one of the first people we met when we moved.
Yeah.
To the
Yeah.
Great
No,
Land
you were
of
kids.
Lava.
I was the camp counselor.
Right. This is Courtney Joyner, folks. It's a great honor to have you with us, Courtney. Thanks for joining us.
Well, you guys are the sweetest.
Classing the place up.
Courtney's a legend.
Courtney's a legend. Yeah, has done everything. I think is there anything you have never done?
Skydiving.
Stay married.
That is rare.
Is written and directed and novelized and noveled and short storied and screenplayed and scripts and screenplays.
Did you ever make cameos in movies? Were you ever in one of your movies?
His acting.
Yeah,
He's got a huge
Dawn of the Dead.
Okay, so acting. We'll get into that.
Yes.
Too. Okay.
Yes.
I remember
Lots of
that
great stories.
Dawn of the Dead and just kind of always classy, always good stuff, always fun stuff. It's the kind of stuff that if you watch this podcast, you know who he is.
Oh.
It's so true. Okay, so let's dig in, shall we?
How
did you get started?
Yeah. How did you get started? What's
question?
your advice to a young filmmaker?
Where did you come from? How did you end up in Hollywood? How does this work?
How do I achieve success?
Guys,
wise one.
I think when I first met you guys, we had already done From a Whisper to a Scream.
Yes, the Offspring,
right?
And
I was kind of off on Jeff was doing. I think he and Darren were doing Stepfather 2 by then.
Right,
I'd
Jeff
written
Burk.
Prison, and we were getting ready to do Class of 1999, or that may have already been made by that point. I honestly can't.
I think
remember.
it was already done. Yeah, I think those were your credits at that point that we were like.
But because we were just all. I'd say this. Going back to, of course, I was a movie geek and all that stuff, and finally got into USC. But as you knew all of us, and the whole thing is that here was this just group of guys who meet in college, and there were like 6 or 7 of us, and hanging out at Bordner's and running our mouths about things we were going to do. Yeah, right. And but the thing was,
dreaming
to a person, every single one of us ended up making movies, which is the odds against that was pretty high.
Yeah,
really good.
So, and big ones and very small ones, but we all, got in there and, started punching away.
There's no such thing as a small movie, only small people, right?
That's right.
Oh, yes.
It's I mean, some of those small films, those are the ones you hold the dearest in your heart,
That's right.
So, yes. Well, thank you very much.
So we met you guys as a group. We met you all as kind of the renegades in Hollywood, making movies, making shit happen.
I think it was through the early days of Cinemondo, actually, when we were still a print magazine, and I think somebody, maybe Ken Hall, wrote to us, and so then when we came out to the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, we were like, we should hang out, we should meet up, and we met.
Yes,
and then
I remember that.
I think that was
Kathy. It is time just to lay it bare. Your Frankenstein dress was the topic of conversation among this group for like a decade. Okay?
That is so cool that I have a legend too. I think I still have that dress. If I don't, I need to get it again because
that's right. The Frankenstein dress.
I forgot about that. That's right. Oh, that
we didn't.
So good. You guys were so polite. I had no idea.
Oh, good Lord.
Youth. We were all so young then.
Aw.
That's sweet. I love it.
But I remember those Fangoria weekend things. That was the internet of its day, I guess. It was maybe the Facebook of its day, because that was where all the people of a certain type got together. And
the thing was, during that period, and I get interviewed about the old full moon stuff and things like that. Yeah. And what folks don't understand, especially the way pay rates are now and what have you on movies that end up on, Yahoo streaming or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we were making real money because the VHS market had exploded.
Yeah.
As you guys know, Action International Pictures.
Yeah.
That, it was just the American film market. It was just like raining gold on everybody. And the demand for product was so intense that we literally could not. Darren and I were talking about this a while ago, that if we had a project now for an independent financing in, like say 1988, it would take us a month and a half of meetings to hit every single independent producer who was making movies.
Yeah.
Now you could do it in an afternoon.
Right. Yeah.
And it was absolutely incredible. It was like the Wild West. It was just this free for all. So we were all doing things all the time. I mean, if you weren't at New Line, then you were at Canon. If you weren't at Canon, you were at Atlantic. If you weren't at Atlantic, and it just TWE or whatever. And we were all working for all of those outfits.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's sort of starting to happen with streaming at all, with all of the little channels? Are you seeing more of that kind of, in a way, smaller movies getting made for streamers?
Kathy, it's a weird situation because the need for product is so enormous, but it seems like the opportunities to contribute product has shrunk. And I don't quite understand why this disparity. I was with a good friend of mine the other day who was extremely successful in television. And he was saying, and he was part of the Charles Brothers group and Cheers and all that stuff.
Right.
And he was saying that he was the only writer. Now, he was one of the main writers on Cheers who was working. Maybe it was a half-hour sitcom format or whatever. But it's like, how is that even possible with this incredible demand? But it's a really weird contradiction, I guess.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. You think people are taking less chances with what they choose to produce, or is it just like there's, you get like a little circle of people that you work with and then you don't go outside of that circle ever?
Yeah.
I think it's more that. And also, too, let's face it, it's the turning of the earth. And, there's a big difference between, wanting to bring somebody in who's in their 60s and wanting to bring somebody in who's 35.
Yeah.
And that affects all of us. So certainly, my immediate group, absolutely it does.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Doesn't affect me yet, but
Also, I feel like streamers are still trying to figure out how to actually make money and be viable. There was a big, boost during the pandemic, and then movie theaters were crashing and burning because everything was closed, and now it's kind of come full circle where now the streamers or people are unsubscribing. Theaters are kind of starting to creep back.
Yeah.
And also too, I think certainly in a case of a place like Netflix, they were overspending to such an astonishing degree.
Yeah.
And you're going, wait a minute, how did this movie cost $65 million when it's, Charlize Theron and Donald Sutherland sitting in a room talking for 2 hours?
People are just raking it in.
It's like, well, wait, this just doesn't make any sense. And, I loved their CEO announcement. Well, we're going to have to stick to very strict budgets. So now nothing over 40.
Right.
40.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But the competition is so fierce. Like Netflix is still king, but they're, they've lost subscribers, some of them are kind of growing, but it's still like, there's a lot of streamers that came out like Peacock or whatever, and they're just sort of leveling out a little bit, not the huge boost that they thought. I think it is the wave of the future though. I mean,
but Kathy, don't you think also with a place like Netflix, they were able to go ahead and go to see Steven Soderbergh, go to Martin Scorsese, go, to Christopher Nolan and all these guys and give them deals.
And big deals. Like
big deals.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's not the shame. Yeah, being being a Netflix movie isn't shameful anymore.
No, no.
And people are like, theaters, you almost don't need them. Like, I miss the ArcLight more. It was like a person died when the ArcLight closed for a while. I still feel this emptiness that's not there. And we're talking about the Cinerama Dome ArcLight. Hopefully it's opening next year, but I want theaters to succeed, but I'm one of those people. I love watching stuff on, my couch in front of the big TV.
I know. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a hypocrite like that. It's just like, it's so easy to watch a movie, click,
hard to get me to the theater now, but it's also not the ArcLight. So.
Yeah.
Well, back in college, Jeff and I it was always the two of us, and then whoever wanted, up onto Hollywood Boulevard. Oh gosh, what was that great theater? Was it the State?
Galaxy?
That was right down there, right off of Hollywood Boulevard. I'll think of it here in a sec. Triple bill. Every single week. And usually, oh, great. Let's go see The Gates of Hell, Funeral Home, and 3 Strikes of the Shaolin Wildcat.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only way to see it, really, because VHS was hard to get them on VHS. And
with guys getting stabbed in the bathroom and everything.
Right. Yeah.
It's so true.
You have to just get used to that, the theaters that smelled like public restroom.
So what was your interest? Like, how did you, when you came to Los Angeles, you want to make movies, what drew you to horror? Or was it just mostly a business decision where those were the ones making money at the lower level budgets? Or did you just love horror or whatever your
it was
genre?
Really a combination, of both. I mean, I am a genuine monster kid, and growing up in that 60s period, I was a younger monster kid, but still, trying to explain what that was like around 1966, 67, and there, 67, I'm 8 years old, and you were just surrounded. The Universal monsters on television, Hammer Films and AIP in the theaters.
The monsters,
the classic monsters, whether it was coloring books and model kits and stickers, and they were everywhere. It was like this explosion of this stuff. And then famous monsters in Castle of Frankenstein and Creepy and Eerie and Vampirella, which I always had to hide. And you were just surrounded by all this great, cool stuff. And then paperbacks and, Frank Frazetta, Conan, and, James Bama, Doc Savage, and all that. So I was just, every day was just a delight, Oh my gosh,
depending on where you live. Where I grew up, that stuff, you just couldn't find it. I remember getting Famous Monsters at the Magic Market in Tallahassee, Florida, where I grew up, and I would look through that thing and not know what the hell any of it was because I'd never seen it or heard of it. And there was so many things in there that I read about that seemed like treasure when I finally got to see it, when I finally got to see that movie or whatever it was, like a certain, like an actor even, or somebody that it seemed like Forrest Ackerman was constantly writing about this person. And I'm like, I've never seen a movie with that person. So some of us were deprived of that monster kid childhood a bit,
Well, the thing is too, but there's been a lot of criticism of Ackerman and things like that. He was very nice to me in my brief encounters with him.
Yeah.
But literally without that magazine, how many 10-year-olds are running around talking about Conrad Veidt and Lionel Atwill?
Exactly.
That would not have happened without Famous Monsters of Filmland. That's just fact. That's just it.
That's true.
So that magazine just introduces all this stuff.
He was a strange cat. We visited him a few times too, up in his 1-800 Moon.
He was so open. Like you could just go to his house and he just let you into his house and walk around. Like it was very strange that he was so easily accessible.
And he loved Kathy.
Oh yes.
I always wore the skeleton dress. No.
There you go.
Hi, can I come in? Yes.
He would take her off and show her things. Like,
he did not take me off and show me things. No,
this is for women only. And he'd take her off. But no, I remember him. I remember one time it was like, do you like a television show called The Outer Limits? And I was like, yeah, of course. And he gets some keys and he hands us the keys and he says, go out in the backyard and go down to the basement. There's a door with a padlock and go inside. And so we went inside and it was like literally every Outer Limits monster down there.
Oh, the Zanti Misfits right there on that shelf. Yes,
sitting right out there. Just would, you know,
we could easily have just taken it. He did not monitor you. He did not check it.
He would disappear. He'd let us just wander his house.
Weird.
Which used
Dr.
to. It was,
Acula let you into Grizzly Land.
Yeah. This is the ring that Bela Lugosi was buried in.
Oh yeah.
Saying, how did you? I won't even ask.
The same jokes every time we visited him, but he was such a part of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you know, that was the Hollywood royalty for us.
See, I was a girl in the South who loved horror movies, and I was the only one. So when I discovered, I wasn't the cool thing like monsters, but I was, Fangoria was like this revelation. I discovered Fangoria. Oh, so we have still, because that's who I am. Yeah. I'm still doing it.
There we go.
I have my ultraviolet movies.
Wow.
And the book of Hannibal from the series. Anyway,
you're such a nerd.
Fangoria was the big deal to me, and it felt like really like subversive, and it was a very big deal to have it. And a lot of stores would carry it, like even like cool stores, like comic book stores. And so when I came to LA, it was like it opened doors because all of a sudden things weren't hidden behind shelves or hidden away, and you weren't ashamed.
And
like
here we were.
And we found tons of women and men who liked horror movies. Believe that was hard to find. It was hard to find.
Well, my youth was, you had to find your friends who were into such things, and one of my best friends is someone that you know too, I believe, Mark Maddox. Mm-hmm. Mark was always a brilliant artist, and in high school, I remember him getting.
He is fantastic.
Basically kicked out of art class for drawing monsters, like he and I both. And he just
South.
It was like we sort of found each other, and it was like,
my people.
We were like first in line to see the movie, Dawn of the Dead, and then the next day we were, throwing film in our Super 8 cameras, making our own zombie movies. But you find your people in this world. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I was interested in how you guys got into that genre, because now we know, but like that's sort of like what my interest would be. And then when we met you guys, you were doing that, and it was like, oh, cool, they're making horror movies. That's really cool. And worked with all the big horror screen queens, and that was a very, very heady time.
Well, the thing is, like you mentioned, Kathy mentioning Fangoria, FM. I mean, that was about older movies generally, and things like that, and then they ceased publication. And Fango not only was let's reinvent a monster magazine and all of that stuff, but also it stepped into also the direct to VHS world, and of course it turned every makeup artist into a rock star. So suddenly, and I don't know, I guess I was profiled in that thing 3 or 4 times, and it was but we all were, and
it was a small clique.
But Tony Timpone and Mike Ingold, and I think Anthony Ferrante wrote every single profile of me they published. I remember this. He used to drive this Toyota truck that always needed a jump whenever he left my apartment. So I always kind of had the cables ready, if, Anthony.
Like, well, I'm heading out. Okay, let me come with you.
Yep, exactly. But it was interesting because here was like this next wave of folks, and they're influenced by Tom Savini or whatever the deal is, and we were the ones who were of the age to go in to talk about writing a Friday the 13th or, whatever it might be, whatever new series was involved and whatever. And we were all doing that stuff, and we were running around. And of course I came in on Rennie's Nightmare on Elm Street and worked in secret and all that junk. And, that was it. We were just kind of part of what was going on, not, the mega, obviously not what John Carpenter and Wes Craven and those. Well, I guess Wes was my boss, but briefly, but was doing. But it was, the theatrical explosion of horror, thanks to Halloween, thanks to Friday the 13th, and even to a degree, thanks to a movie like Maniac, which got so much attention.
Yeah.
Still legendary.
Oh yeah, I mean, remember with the paint all over the posters on Hollywood Boulevard and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's right.
The protests and everything. So, there really was a lens being focused on horror. And, you guys, I always wanted to ask you this because I got a little weirded out at Fangoria conventions because we went through this period where car accident videos.
Oh,
and the kind of faces of death type stuff.
Right.
Of death, of course, was phony, but there was a lot of stuff and a lot of obsession with serial killers.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was like, there's no supernatural element here. I don't consider this horror. This is like crime and tragedy. And just because it's gory doesn't make it horror.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
totally
my thing too. I always felt like if something smelled mean-spirited to me, I didn't want to be attacked, by a film or provoked by a film. I mean, in some ways you want to have your expectations provoked, or you want to come out a little bit disoriented. Maybe you want to see something that is shocking, but I don't want to see anything that makes me, I think what it is it's like if it's too close to reality as far as what it is. I mean, I'm not what you'd call a religious person, but I love movies about, devils and demons and stuff. That's an example of detaching from reality. I think for me, films are more like a detachment from reality, an escape from reality.
Well, and I also I draw a very hard line between fake and real. And I enjoy the artistry of the Gore effect, which sounds weird when I tell people. When they're hiding their eyes, I'm like, dude, you're missing this guy spent hours on this. But I don't want to see real people dying. I get that it's fake in the movies, and there is no entertainment value to me to see things like people dying in car wrecks or in faces of death, even though some of them were, like you said, kind of fake. But I'm not interested in that. I do love a good serial killer movie, though. But
of course.
Well, true crime is a different thing. That's a documentary, and
but not like Gore effect to real effect. No, I don't want to see a real person being pulled out of a car wreck. I think it was.
I did research on a project. This was really before the explosion of the internet, because this is around 1981 or whatever. And I was actually doing a thing about. I kind of wanted to try and replicate M. And so I went to the LAPD and they took me down to the sex crimes unit.
Right.
And these guys, they were great, but they warned me. They said, look, we will show you some crime scene photos, but you may not want to see this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
This is real. And it freaks a lot of officers out. They don't want to stay in this unit very long and everything else. And I was Mr. Bravado. So I said, oh, sure.
I can take it.
A huge mistake.
Yeah.
It was so horrible. And that was the thing. Even if I had seen movie scenes that looked visually similar, the fact that this was real, it just entered my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I just never understood when, that the conventions that was kind of going on for a little while.
Yeah, there was a fascination with that. There were some people that I felt like were a little bit too obsessive about the gore stuff. It was like a focus on the gore and the kills and the gore and the kills. And, the slasher stuff to me, I've never really been too into that genre. Like you said, supernatural element is the thing that always appealed to me more often. I mean, I can't really think of any slasher movies other than, I guess, Friday the 13th and
Halloween. I feel like Michael Myers is relatively kind of supernatural. He can't die or whatever.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is he the boogeyman?
Yeah. Is he? Well, apparently he's not, because the last movie they
told God, yes, now.
God, that movie was terrible. Did you see the new Halloween?
No, I didn't. I hold the Carpenter movie in such reverence. And I was up for writing one of the sequels at one point and stuff, but it just kind of get diluted and diluted. Yeah. And it's, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not like you can't make a good sequel. It's not like, but the impact is never going to be the same.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a simplicity. I feel like they keep trying to top it. but you don't need to top it. You just need to capture that spirit of the eerie quietness and the creepiness and the lead up. But nobody wants to do it anymore. It's all just bam, bam, bam.
Yep.
You know.
I know. No, I know. In fact, okay. Here's a bloody Hollywood story for you.
Oh yeah, bring it on. Woo!
I was one of the writers who was brought in for Jason versus Freddy. And I was sitting around trying to think of an idea, and I came up with something that I thought would just absolutely nail it. And, this was back when I was represented by Catherine James. And right. I told her the idea, and it was like silence on the other end. And she said, "You are going to get this movie." So I go in, I pitch it to the head of development, and he said, "My God, we've heard a zillion things. This is what it was." And I wanted something really streamlined and clean.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, here's the deal. Why is Jason Voorhees the way he is?" And everyone's kind of looking at each other. And I said, "Because he is the surviving Elm Street kid."
Oh, that's interesting.
And Freddy Krueger, to him, Jason is the one who got away.
I like that.
And that's what brings them together.
Nice.
And they blew me out of that office. Sean Cunningham says, he goes, "I don't know. I can't really hear Jason's voice in this." I'm like, "Jason, what the hell does that mean?" Anyway, I ended up at Bordner's racking up, $70, and
drinking your years away.
Yeah.
Sean Cunningham, asshole. That's really fun. That's a good one. That's a bloody
But yeah, that's the kind of, it's not like this major, complicated, convoluted, twists, multiple twists on top of twists kind of thing that people seem to think they need to do now. I don't know. It's like, that would have been something that was like clean. I love those movies that have a one-line premise, or a quick premise.
Well, also like that it informs the other films. Like you do the sequel, and all of a sudden you can see the new other films in a new light, which is a cool thing.
It's this serialized aspect now to sequels. I don't really, for good or bad, the Dirty Harry movies, each movie stands as its own movie.
Right. Yeah.
James Bond, each film. Now these are series movies, but there's still. Now, sometimes, yes, you do want continuity.
Yeah, there's threads.
I'm going to see Taste the Blood of Dracula, which, of course, is one of the great entrees from Dracula's Risen from the Grave. But we've gotten to that point now, particularly maybe with the Marvel Universe and things where, okay, if you haven't been watching show A,
right,
you're not going to understand the movie. And if you didn't see the previous film, and it doesn't even have to be from this series, it can be another movie.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Then, and you didn't catch Captain America's cameo or whatever, you're not going to understand what the hell's going on this time.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just, maybe it's just too much for my old adult brain, but like, wait a minute, why not just a movie?
I know. Just make a good movie.
Because I think people get upset when the thing when a thing goes against that. It's like, you read online, I shouldn't even address it, but there's so many people online who say they're fans, but they're actually just little boys who probably get mad at the teenager at the subway if they don't cut the cucumbers like mommy. They want everything to be the same every time. I want it to be the same, and otherwise you're ruining my childhood. And it's like, I like total reboots. I mean, if I like the idea where somebody says, they're going to do a Batman movie, but it's going to be 20,000 years in the future, and it's, Batman is a woman or something. I'm like, yeah, I want to see that. I mean, why not? Mm-hmm. But some people are like, no.
Well, it's like they don't want a black James Bond, which I think is completely a valid.
Right.
Like they need to make a black James Bond. It would be great.
Why not?
They cast Lewis as a black man in the new Interview with the Vampire. Genius casting. Awesome idea. Gives it a whole new depth. It's like the people get angry about that, and I don't understand it. They go, "Oh, it's woke." It's like we should be showing the real world for what it is in our horror also.
If they'd ever really read comic books, they'd know that happened all the time in comic books. There were tons of total reboots. In fact, reboots for the sake of being a reboot. You know, the whole world gets erased and started over.
Not even a complaint. Get out of here with that.
Yeah.
Well, Bert, you remember now, this was the Batman I grew up with in comic books was the Batman, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams.
Right.
Yeah. The long-eared Batman, the detective Batman. Yeah.
And there was a lot of heat because they got rid of Robin.
Right.
And, you know, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Dark Knight and all that crap. But yes, there is a comic book genius. Screw him. Let me tell you something. Those guys did it first. And it wasn't until Christopher Nolan made his first movie that he gave them the credit.
That's right.
Right.
Raw Ghul, baby. I mean, that's Batman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw up. Yeah. Yeah. And if you want to get a lot of letters, okay. Movie, kind of that weird, completist, narrow vision fanboy thing. Man, those guys have nothing on the completely socially inept comic book guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally. No, you can't even compete. No, that's a whole other level.
They're that's
I don't even dip into that.
Yeah, that's Planet Z.
Right.
And it's still there. Like years later,
absolutely
it's still the same. Like that has not changed at all.
Yep.
Just now they write emails instead of write letters. But other than that, that's like craziness. And then when you combine them,
I mean, I've always felt like, why not? You know, I like it all. It's if it's good, you know.
Sure.
There's some that I don't like, but then, you know, somebody else will take those fictional characters and they'll do another version, another reboot, another, you know, like I love Adam West. I love Christian Bale. You know, both of those are Batman. And
what about Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, I love that movie. I thought that was really cool.
I liked him. I did not like the movie. I'm sorry. It was just way too long, and all he did was stand around. He didn't do any Batman stuff. It was a lot of nothing.
He's a cool actor,
kept coming through doorways.
Yeah, he was all lurking, and he'd go, "What's this?" They're like, "Batman found the clue." It's like, what's happening here?
But it was trying to address that kind of the Dark Knight, the dark detective comics kind of Batman.
Yeah.
But what a brilliant job Warner Brothers Animation has done. That Under the Red Hood was like one of the best things ever. And I loved Gotham by Gaslight.
Yes.
One. Oh, that was really cool. Yes.
Such a good idea.
Those are fun. Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, I'm always going to be a superhero guy. I think I don't know why. You know, I just grew up on that. It was like, you know, living in the little town that I grew up in. Comic books were one of the saviors. You know, they were one of the little windows into a cool escapist world. And I loved the I was more of a Marvel kid. I love both, but you know, DC and Marvel, there's you know, it's like Republican, Democrat. I don't know. It's like, but I was always more of a Marvel kid, and so I actually love the Marvel films. I love the I've seen, I think, all of them. I don't think I've missed any of them, and I've worked on quite a few of it, you know, here and there. So I kind of feel a little bit of a connection to it. Personal connection to why I like it, you know. They've been nice to me, but I love the fact that they've actually, instead of what you would see in the past with the Marvel properties, they would try to do their own twist on it as far as making it like a TV series that you'd seen before or whatever. But they actually went back, I think, in these modern ones and addressed it from why are these things still so popular? Why are they legend? Why are they so beloved? And it's like, it's because of Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko.
Well, am I allowed to step away for about 2 seconds?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But
that's see his cool background with all that fun stuff.
Yeah, there's a silver. Speaking of Jack Kirby,
all the Marvel stuff, but
that's really cool.
Hey, there.
Where is it? Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's really
cool. This is Jack Kirby bust, I believe.
Nice.
Cigar and everything.
Yeah, you gotta have.
That's amazing.
You gotta have the king.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I think it all came. I mean, I'm one of those people that of all the people, the Stan Lee, everybody, I gravitate more towards thinking that the artist had more of a hand in it. I mean, I appreciate Stan Lee a lot, of course, but I think to me it was Jack Kirby.
Well, you know, Burk, that's the thing, is the difference in the Marvel and DC approach, even in the creation of the books, of course, was
Yeah.
the artists were given more of a hand, and then the writers would come in. I mean, they would, know what their story was. It was a Doctor Doom story, whatever it was going to be, and then they would come in, as they said, the quote unquote Marvel style,
right,
and kind of fill in the blanks. Whereas DC, it was like a movie script,
right,
yeah,
and that was what the artists were given. So it was definitely a different approach, and but you end up with guys who worked for both, brilliantly, and so I'm like all about both of them, quite honestly. Growing up with Marvel, of course, oh my God, when Stan Lee's soapbox, when he said Jack Kirby was leaving Marvel, that was I like just laid in bed for a week. I couldn't. The world was dimming out for me. I just didn't know what I was going to do. My God.
But then
of course, the New Gods,
Fourth World, and all that stuff was that's like among my favorite Kirby stuff. Mr. Miracle and all those crazy things that was like, okay, almost all of this is kind of what I always liked about his stuff at Marvel. So what did Stan Lee do?
I'm still dreaming about having my own mother box. So
yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, or just the Forever People, that whole the whole how he was kind of even more so at DC, which DC was always more a little conservative. I felt Marvel was a little bit more hip, But when he got to doing his Forever People stuff, it was sort of the counterculture, the sort of beatnik, not so much beatniks, but that great the hippies. And, they were on motorcycles and they had long hair and they were blacklight posters. And
here's the controversy. Wait, I'll get this off, so I'm not all jumping all over the place. There you can see Galactus there right behind me.
Oh yeah. You can see his antlers.
That's really funny.
But here is the thing. Remember, Marvel got into this issue with the Comic Codes Authority with that issue of Spider-Man where the guy is high and he's going to jump off the balcony.
Right. Yes.
Or the building ledge, I should say.
Yeah.
And there was no little stamp.
Yeah.
However, DC, how the hell did they get away? That great Neil Adams cover.
Yes.
Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Bucky is a heroin shooter.
Yes.
Good Lord.
The old days.
Yeah. Different times.
Yep.
See, I was more, I'm being pretty quiet during this because I didn't really have a dog in the race at the time. I was like, yeah, Batman's good. I loved Batman when I was a kid. I wasn't into it, but I was more like Tales from the Crypt. So that's why I love all horror anthologies. Like that was sort of my jam. I wasn't like superheroes. I was more like, oh, the creepy crawly, So that's why I think why I'm liking that, the Cabinet of Curiosities is very, very Tales from the Crypt feeling, but just elevated, like times 100.
Yeah. Well, those really Amicus movies that were based on EC comic books, that's where Tales from the Crypt and all those things were based on those EC comic stories, and those were classic comic books.
Of course, Amicus, really going back to something like Dead of Night, had they had Dr. Terror's House of Horrors and Torture Garden and The House That Dripped Blood and all these kind of pre-Tales from the Crypt.
So good.
Yeah.
So they actually, had their own anthology format, really in direct competition with Hammer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were kind of the perfect company to go ahead and jump into that.
I guess Hammer is now Blumhouse. It's like the low budget horror. Like I wish there was more Hammer. Like what happened to them? Why is there not? Besides Blumhouse, who can do not great stuff too, but thank God there's someone out there doing it, But I wish there was somebody who was doing Hammer stuff. Like, why is there not more of that?
Hammer
like those little indie companies who crank out the kind of low budget horror. It's not as common.
Well, the companies with that kind of identity, whether it was Full Moon or whoever, and and they were in the direct-to-video thing. But don't forget, Kathy, Hammer is doing the Let the Right One In television series.
Yeah, but they're not the same.
No, it's not Peter Cushing.
It's not Peter Cushing.
But it feels more like a big conglomerate making. I haven't watched Let the Right One In yet, but it doesn't have that sort of little scrappy, making the cool gothic stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But,
well, the amazing
but first,
thing,
but let's go back to a point. Why did you cringe when I said Blumhouse?
well, come on.
What did he do?
No, he didn't do anything. He was very nice. It's just a knee-jerk reaction, comparing Blumhouse to Hammer, just kind of,
Oh, no, it wasn't even compared. It was more like, why is he the only one doing this? Like,
tears my
Hammer
heart
was
out.
doing. I know. Tearing your heart out.
I
know horror has changed. The found footage changed everything, didn't it?
But this is the thing. I actually was talking to somebody who had a deal with Paramount, and we were talking about the relicensing Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. And whatever Hammer titles, and it's very convoluted the way the U.S. distribution on the British product and who actually put up the money.
Right.
And, that's why when Warner Brothers, back when Richard Donner had the library, I was brought in to write the remake of 10 Seconds to Hell. And but even they couldn't. And remember, Carpenter was doing the Quatermass movie and all that.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get that launched.
Insane.
And again, because of all this stuff, so Simon Oakes did a fantastic job just sorting everything out legally. And I love The Woman in Black.
Yes, that was great.
I was about to say that's great
what
one.
I want to see more of. It's more the
guy. That gave me high hopes right there.
That was terrific.
So good.
The thing is, what I've done a lot of some commentaries on Hammer stuff and co-produce some box sets of their releases, primarily with Columbia. And the thing is, it's always that when you go in actually looking at these movies, is how unbelievably cheap they actually were.
Oh yeah.
And what they accomplished with no money.
Yep.
I made these, and you're like going, my God, this is low budget even by American standards, but this elegance and everything, because they hired people who knew how to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. So it was really just wonderful. And here, I got kind of something silly to tell you. Oh, wait a minute. I keep doing that.
It's something silly to tell you. I'll go over here and say
Here we go. All right. Now, okay. I did a commentary on a really kind of very fun Raoul Walsh movie called The Sheriff of Fractured Jaw, starring Jane Mansfield.
I love that title.
Okay.
I have not seen that.
And Kenneth More and Robert Morley. Okay. They shot the movie in Spain, and while they were there, they built a town it was a Western town, and so with all the frontage pieces and all that stuff. Okay.
Right.
That town was art directed by Bernard Robinson, who, of course, was Hammer's premier art director. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was British, and this was an international crew and everything, so it makes sense. All right. Now, get your minds ready to be totally burned. All right. So, he goes, he's in London, he's working with Hammer, he's creating all these miracles. A movie company is in Spain and uses that town as a location for their Western. And the Western was Fistful of Dollars. So the art director on The Horror of Dracula is actually the art director on Fistful of Dollars.
That's funny. I was going to say, and this is actually a good segue to some of your books too. It's I was raised on Hammer and Lee as Dracula and Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, like those. And that was
Leone stuff.
The Italian, the spaghetti westerns. I love. I mean, we would go to like all night viewings of these things, and so that leads me to that. Those are about the only westerns I like. Like there's something about those that just has this cool, almost kind of gothic feel to them. So
like a feeling of like mythology. It's
right.
like a mythological.
Right.
Yeah.
So what led you from horror to you now write a lot of Western novels, right? Correct?
I created a series for Pinnacle Books, Shotgun.
So how did you segue into that? Like, did you just always love Westerns and maybe your horror taste was kind of involved in that?
I'm actually, when we do this little tomorrow over at Valley Relics Museum, I'm going to be talking about not only horror Westerns, but here's the thing. So many people involved with horror films also made westerns, and particularly I wanted to nod to actors. When you think of John Carradine and Lon Chaney, they made more westerns than they did horror movies.
Yes,
and it was Lon Chaney that really got me going, because I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or something, and I'm flipping through TV Guide looking for melodrama, because that's what a horror movie did. And I see Lon Chaney's name, and I believe it was on High Noon. So I start watching High Noon, and I did like Gunsmoke and things like that, but my father wasn't like Mr. Westerns or anything. He was more Mr. Perry Mason. So
Mr. Perry Mason.
I was suddenly, I don't know, it just kind of creeped in from the side. And also the ABC Sunday night movie in those days, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly was a major event.
Yes.
When they would show it once a year. That was big stuff. And there were a lot of Westerns that were still being shown in theaters. So, Lozana's Raid and, that type of stuff. So, you just kind of, I just absorbed it, and I just, fell in love with the genre. But the more obscure Euro Westerns, I wasn't really able to, sometimes there'd be something at a drive-in where it was the last feature or something like that. And, William Berger and Klaus Kinski and something dubbed. But I wasn't really able to explore that until I got hooked into like Video Search of Miami and those companies that, you paid a fortune for a VHS that, you could hardly see.
Yeah.
But you got to see something.
Yeah.
And these things were just not, available. And it literally was to the point, I think, with the Euro Westerns that people kind of thought they began and ended with Sergio Leone.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, whether it's Lee Van Cleef or, oh my God, Franco Nero, I think the first Django is just tremendous.
Yes.
And you talk about death imagery. Good Lord.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. But that's kind of what I wanted to point out, was so many Euro Westerns, just like Westerns here in the States, were made by journeyman directors. These guys, if they weren't doing a giallo, they were doing a Western. If they weren't doing a Western, they were doing a comedy. They were guns for hire.
Yeah.
Some of them had just a real wonderful aptitude for the genre, but they weren't necessarily genre specialists. They just knew what they were doing. They were good filmmakers, and they did this was, assignment work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a genre, the Western. It's another reality. It's separate from our normal everyday. It's not like a romantic comedy set in the present day.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of, when you're writing such a thing, you have to put yourself into a reality that you've never really lived in, which I guess if that relates to anything. But one of the things that, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I'm sorry, I get all jazzed up.
No, get it.
That's why you're here.
Well, and also, when we talk about the different genres, don't forget how many of these filmmakers, whether it is Sergio Corbucci, whether it is Mario Bava were making Hercules movies and Samson movies and Goliath and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Making paper mache dragons, and
that's it.
I think he was in the art department too, doing design, and Mario Bava's father, I think, did production design and sculpture and things like that. It was all creating, world building and that kind of thing. I think when you make a Western, you create a Western, you're world building. It's like similar to science fiction in a way,
Yeah.
But one thing that always grabbed me really hard about those Euro Westerns was the music, the Ennio Morricone music. That's the thing that when I was young, it really pulled me in, because I think that just set this emotional foundation under so much of the movies. And I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but I've told my friends, but one of the great memories of my life, I think, one of them, I have many, but my wife and I were in Venice. We were in Italy, and we were walking around. spent the afternoon in Venice, and that night we wanted to go out at night after dark, and they say that's when the locals come out and the tourists go away. So we were wandering around, and we were in St. Mark's Square, and there's this little cafe over there, and there's a band, a old-fashioned Italian cafe band, with a piano, and the guy's got a violin, and there's a upright bass and a trumpet and a couple of other instruments, and I heard echoing through the alleyways of Venice the music from Once Upon a Time in the West. And it was like the most stirring thing. It's hard to explain the way it echoed, the fact that we're in Italy and we're walking. So we went to this cafe, and my wife is not really familiar with these movies so much, but she's just like, oh my God, what is this music? What is this? And so she filmed it with her camera, and I was like, this is a great movie. And we ended up watching the movies, and now she's really, into Ennio Morricone, has all of his, she's got her iPod, her phone is full of his music. And so it was just one of those things. And I think I'm in my opinion, I think people that score films are filmmakers. They tell the story in just as much of a way as the production designer or the director in some cases.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those European Westerns have that Italian sensibility to the emotional content, which I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a style to Italian films. You bring that to the American setting of the Old West, and you get this beautiful mixture, which becomes almost like legend. Like you're listening to something from an ancient text.
Well, Leone and Morricone went to grammar school together.
Yeah.
And one of the techniques that they kind of developed, I got about 3 stories in a row.
That's
is
great.
that Morricone would go off and he would temp the music. As you know, they would play it on set.
Yes.
While they were shooting.
Yes.
And part of the reason was Leone wanted his actors to be walking in sync with the beat of the music. And this is particularly true when Fonda and his gang approached the ranch before they slaughtered the family.
Yes. Yeah.
And Fonda was like, what is it? He had never in his life ever heard of anything like this.
Plus they weren't recording sound.
That's right. And of course, those movies were never, recorded with a sync track.
Right.
And so
you could shout direction to actors,
which Leone had a tendency to do.
Yeah.
And but when out here at the Autry Museum, Mrs. Autry decided to really up kind of the ante and bring people in, and they did a big Sergio Leone festival. Clint Eastwood paid for the restoration of all the movies and everything. And Ennio Morricone was not able to come, but Francisco Damasi and, all these, his coordinators and his orchestrators did, and they brought the orchestra.
Wow.
So there we were in the forecourt, listening to this incredible music, and everybody's there, it's like, oh, look, there's Martin Scorsese. It was really cool.
Wow.
But me and Darren and a bunch of us went to a screening of Fistful of Dollars the following day in this restored print. Okay. The Whistler, who had to be like 85 years old, was there.
Wow. And
he goes out with a guitar and just him and whistling.
Wow.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
And me and Darren and all of us are just sobbing our faces off. This is so awesome. And Darren's wife and the girl I was with, they just looked at us like we were like our head idiots.
Oh, that's sweet.
And, oh my gosh, it was just so wonderful. And but when Steve Carver was doing Lone Wolf McQuade, he had Damasi do the score. And a lot of Morricone's score was actually recorded in a church, I guess, in Rome, that had just the perfect acoustics. It was no longer a church, and they would bring the orchestras in and whatever. And Morricone came in one day just to see what was going on, and he conducted the score.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Steve was just like said, Maestro, yes, please, Oh, but here, one more story. When, Steve was, as you know, he was a very good friend of mine, and we co-wrote a book together, and then he died during COVID. He was doing a movie called Drum, which is a sequel to Mandingo.
Oh.
Starring Ken Norton.
Oh.
And the Western director, Burk Kennedy, the War Wagon and all that stuff had started it. And Dino De Laurentiis felt he was turning it into too much of a Western. So Burk stepped aside and Steve was brought in to take over the movie. So he goes to Louisiana and Burt is still there and shows him everything he shot and whatever. And he was fantastic. Burt was a really nice man, but he's also getting paid his whole salary. So he was fine. Go have fun, And so anyway, Dino De Laurentiis tells Carver, you're going to have a roommate. We got the big house. You not even have to see each other, but you're going to have a roommate. He's like, okay, great. His roommate was Sergio Leone.
Oh,
that's funny.
He goes, oh my God. And Sergio was there to try to get De Laurentiis to finance a project. I think it might've been Once Upon a Time in America.
Wow.
And so he was there during the whole shooting, and sometimes he'd come on the set, but mostly he stayed at home cooking. So at the end of the day, everybody would go to their house where Sergio Leone had made these giant Italian feasts.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just eat away. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
That's pretty fantastic. Yeah.
So good.
So there we go.
That's a great ending.
Yeah.
Finale.
I just feel fortunate that my wife, you know how you're talking about the people that you're with, sometimes they look at you and they're like, what is it about this that you like? I feel fortunate that my wife kind of gets it, in a lot of cases. Like when we heard that music coming down the hall, down these alleyways, and it was like it was one of those things where like this is the power of film and music all both together, because you can listen to that music by itself. You could probably watch those films without music and still be engaged. But when you put those things together, it becomes this magical.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with Euro Westerns, there's also this, they've kind of come to under scrutiny, and it's like, well, this is the thing. You have to look at the way the movies were made, because it definitely directly affects the content.
Yeah.
By that, I mean the total absence of Native Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
And except for Burt Reynolds and Navajo Joe,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But it's interesting because it's like, well, you can't take or make a cultural judgment about films or this kind of art without looking into the background of its origin points.
Yeah.
And I know they have come under criticism for that, but I'm like, well, no, they were made in Spain. They were not.
Yeah.
They were not, even though they kept saying, Utah territory.
Yeah.
1883, and in comes Klaus Kinski or something.
Right.
So true. So are you watching, and we'll bring it forward into the present, are you watching anything now that you appreciate, like streaming any series or anything that you think is worthwhile? Is there anything you're addicted to?
Oh gee, well, I can tell you, I'm seriously looking forward to Justified, High Noon in Detroit.
Oh my God,
I just can't
wait.
Yeah,
that's gonna be so good. I'm glad they got Oliphant back.
Yeah, that is so great. But I'll be honest, I end up going to BritBox because I'm so, anytime I can get a British police procedural, I'm there for like the next 30 hours.
The best.
It doesn't.
That is the stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you see Line of Duty? Or no, Line of Fire. Line of
Fire. Yes.
Oh, that is amazing. It's so hardcore. Like just chilling.
Yeah. No, I just love it because they seem to capture I want to say objectivity, but a realism, even in the way, everybody relates to each other or whatever, and there aren't any specific nods to anything in the headlines or whatever. It's just, because this is the way cops are. They just, go. Ooh, can I tell you a silly story?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Please tell us a silly
story. That's what this podcast is all about.
Okay. My upstairs neighbor, she is no longer there, used to fight a great deal with her boyfriend. And one night she stabbed him.
Oh,
yikes.
Multiple times. And he got out of there. He was actually, I think, like a animal pantomimist. In fact, I think he worked for Disney a couple of times.
Weird.
Oh,
okay.
Like an animal movement.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
They would put the ping pong ball markers over.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so he's taken off, and I called the cops because they were screaming and yelling and things were being broken and everything.
Wow.
All right. So the police arrive, and they have everything in hand, and they found the guy and they took him to the hospital and everything. And the officer comes into my house and he's looking around at all my Universal Monster stuff in the next room and everything. And he's like, well, I've got a big Star Wars collection and it's all in the original packaging, but my wife won't let me have it in the house. So I had to build a special thing in the garage. And I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah.
What's your address?
Well, he goes, well, my aunt was a actress. She was kind of a star. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. I said, who's your aunt? Kim Novak.
What?
Oh, yeah. Never heard of her.
Never heard of her.
And I was like, what? That's exactly that was my reaction. And there it was, Officer Novak.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Oh, no kidding. So that's not a fake name. I didn't know that not her Hollywood name.
Talking, he says, well, I met Kirk Douglas when I was 8 years old. I said, yes, Strangers When We Meet. And he goes, yeah, that's the movie. You see that movie? And it was
that is hilarious. Oh my God, Hollywood's hilarious.
Yeah, I know.
And
Where
he had
else?
a picture taken in front of my 40 by my French Grand of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that's in the other room.
Wow.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is a great way to end this incredible interview. And
Hollywood
it would
story.
be great to have you back on to talk about like genres, like let's have a whole episode about Hammer, or we should have a whole episode about like maybe just your writing, and it would be really fun to do that, I think. So we should.
I know. I actually had more. I had another question I wanted to ask, but I think it would trigger another hour of discussion. But
I'm sorry. I kind of
no. This is fantastic.
This grandpa's disease.
We just want you back on for another episode. So you just have
we encourage grandpa's disease on this podcast. The origin of this podcast is the fact that we all have grandpa's disease. And we like to share it with the world. We want to tell everybody. We go off on tangents. Like we're proud of it. Yeah.
Yes. So we're definitely having you back on, even just as another co-host to talk about movies. It'd be awesome.
Oh, wonderful!
If you want to, but you have to agree right now on tape.
I agree
contract
wholeheartedly. Do I need to open a vein or anything?
Yeah, you must send us a cup of your blood.
Yeah.
This is contractually binding if you say it on a podcast, apparently. So
no problem. Oh, speaking of blood, well, I'm watching Taste the Blood of Dracula tonight, the new Bev.
That's a great Halloween. Oh my God, so good.
Always on film.
Always. Yep. That's so great.
With Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed.
Oh, so good.
Which I think I saw with you many years ago. We saw that somewhere. I had never seen it before. And you were telling me Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which I think may be one of the greatest titles of all time. But a really strange movie. It's a Hammer film that is not what you might expect. It's a
surgical drama. That's the thing. It's so unusual. And okay, this may get a little too personal and dicey, but I will say, when the first time I saw Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, I was like 10 years old. And I'm looking at Simon Ward and Veronica Carlson kissing, and I'm like, no, that's what I want to do.
That's about the right age.
That's what I want to be when I grow up, a guy who kisses women.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and being here for so long and talking to us. And we'll definitely have you back to talk more.
Oh, you guys are the greatest.
We could go on and on and on, I'm afraid.
That's why we're going to stop now and go on and on again. Another episode.
But hang out after the credits. We'll be off the air, and then we can talk about the really interesting stuff.
About behind the scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See you guys later.
Thanks for joining us today with Courtney Joyner, the legend. He'll be back. He's actually he signed the contract.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Yes, I have.
There's tons more stories. We know there is. All right.
Oh yeah.
See you guys later.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.